the Director of Academic Advice. All right, I'll start over. My name's Amber Watson. I'm the Director of Academic Advising here in the College of Science. I also have with me Danielle Massey, who's our Assistant Director in the Advising Office, and Eric Goebel, who's an Academic Advisor in our office. Danielle and Eric will be answering questions while I'm speaking. Just to repeat for those of you who weren't here a second ago, if you put your questions in chat, they'll appear under your name, just so you know. The session is being recorded, so that also will show up on the recorded session. And some questions they're going to hold to the end because it's a really good question that we want to address so that everybody gets the answer. Some they'll kind of answer as we go along and as I'm talking. So I have a fairly brief presentation for you, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. So here's what we're going to talk about today. You're going to hear an overview of our academic programs and curriculum flexibility. Essentially, how do you get from here today to graduation, which is our goal. You're going to hear about the academic advising team and how you're supported here at Northeastern. You'll hear a little bit about the co-op program. And then, like I said, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers, although you're certainly welcome to put them in the chat, even starting now. We'll answer some of them as we go along. So here at Northeastern in the College of Science, we have 15 single majors. Most of you probably applied to one of the majors on your screen. So if you've come in wanting to be a biology major, you applied for biology or cell and molecular biology, that's what you're entering in as a student. However, some of you might have applied for a combined major. And so for those of you that don't know what that is, I'm going to cover it really briefly. A combined major is when two disciplines have worked together to create one degree. And so the cool thing about that is they take pieces of each degree so that it fits in the same amount of time it would take you to complete any of these 15 degrees you see in front of you. We have things like in the College of Science, like math and biology, for instance, but we also have ones that span other colleges. One of our most popular is mathematics and business administration, for example. So there's a huge number of combined majors, and they're really designed to fit in the same amount of time as any of these 15 majors. Sometimes we get questions about double majors and what is that and what's the difference between that and a combined major, for instance. A double major is when you would complete the entire degree for two disciplines. And the difference is that often takes more than 8 semesters. So 8 semesters is a typical time to graduation for students, whether you're here at Northeastern or in other places. And so a double major is possible, but sometimes it takes more time. That's why we created these combined majors, and often students will find that a combined major kind of meets their needs for both disciplines. We also have a ton of minors at the university. You can minor in just about every topic, including outside of the College of Science. It's really popular for our students to do a minor course. In a second, I'll show you a slide that explains how that might fit into your time at Northeastern, but you definitely have an opportunity to study subjects outside of the sciences, even if you're not doing a combined major. And then finally, the last kind of way that you can choose what to study at Northeastern is something called a +1 program. And we have a handful of master's degrees that are applied master's degrees that combine an undergrad degree and a master's degree in 5 years. So right now we have biotechnology, bioinformatics, excuse me, applied mathematics. There's a applied physics and engineering crossover +1. We have applied behavioral analysis, school counseling, believe that I've covered all of them, and environmental public policy +1. And the way that works is in your last year, in your senior year, you would take a set of courses that count both towards your undergrad degree and your grad degree. So when you graduate with your undergrad degree, you have 1 year left to finish out your master's degree. So this is a cool way to kind of get both degrees in a relatively shorter amount of time. This isn't something you need to figure out now today. You don't need to know if you want to do a +1 this summer, but it is something you could talk to your advisor about starting in the fall or next spring. So here's how it works at Northeastern. Every single student needs 128 credits to graduate. That is the bare minimum number of credits you can have to graduate with a degree from Northeastern. Some of our degrees require up to 136 credits. The reason for that is because some of our degrees, as you can imagine, have a lot of lab requirements, and each of those labs are one additional credit. So for instance, if you're a biology student, you're going to graduate with 136 or more credits. If you're a psychology student, you might graduate with 128 or more credits. You're not taking more overall classes, and it's not taking longer to get to that number. It's really just accounting for those labs that you need if you're in a lab-based major. In that 128 to 136 number, we divide that into 3 categories at Northeastern. So as you're going about your time here, you can think of your classes as hitting one or more of these categories. The first one is your major courses, which is fairly self-explanatory. If you're a math major, you're going to be taking quite a few math classes. We call those major courses. You also might incidentally be taking supporting classes in the sciences, like math students take physics, for instance, or biology students take chemistry, physics. And so all of that we consider your major courses. And then on top of that, every single student at Northeastern has to complete their new path requirements to graduate. Ideally, you all have been through the Canvas module, and at least the concept of new path is at least familiar to you. But essentially, these are topics like difference and diversity, interpreting cultures, ethical reasoning. Every single student needs to meet all of them to graduate. But the way it works at Northeastern is each major covers a different subset of these courses. So for instance, if you're a psychology major, you don't need to take a societies and institutions class because it's covered by your major. On the flip side, if you're a mathematics major, society and institutions is not covered, so you will take an additional class outside of math that covers societies and institutions. So every single one of your majors is going to cover a different subset, but at the end of the day, you all will have taken classes in every category. If you add up your major courses and you add up your new path, what you have left is general elective. Every single degree at Northeastern has free space that gets you from your major and new path to the 128 to 136. That number will vary based on your degree, but often for most of our majors, you have room to at least complete a minor, which is generally 5 to 7 courses, or you can just take courses that are interesting. Some students aren't interested in a minor, and so they might just take a history class here, an art class there, scuba diving there, right? Like, so you can really mix it up, but everybody is going to take classes outside of new path and outside of your major to graduate. So individually, what your semesters will look like, starting this semester all the way through to graduation, in a fall or spring semester, full-time at Northeastern is 4 4-credit classes, plus any additional 1-credit courses like your labs or like your intro to college course, which hopefully you all have seen at least some information about that on your Canvas course. If you're an honors student, you'll also be doing a course just this one semester called Honors Discovery. So you might actually have closer to 20 credits. But every single student who's listening to this presentation right now is going to have a minimum of 17 credits. And you could have as many as 20, and all of that is completely normal because most of your classes have additional 1-credit labs. And so it's totally normal and fine, and freshmen do it all the time and are very successful in an average of 19 classes in your first semester. I get a ton of questions about credits, about transfer credits. So I'm going to explain to you how it all works so you really understand what you're going to be working with when you speak to your advisor and when you start here in the fall. So probably the most common transfer credits that first-year students bring in are test credits, and those are AP exams, IB exams. If you have GCE, there are some Indian certificate exams, French baccalaureate. There's a whole list of them on the admissions website. So this is how it works. We will take 32 credits of test credit towards your degree. So that 128 to 136 number I mentioned, 32 credits that you've successfully completed will count towards that number. However, it's not uncommon for students to have passed more than 32 credits. So I'm going to give you an example so that this hopefully makes sense. Let's say that you have 32 credits of AP exams, and for whatever reason, you have Physics 1 IB, right, that you've passed. Here's how it'll work. We'll apply 32 credits towards your overall credits towards graduation. And we'll use your physics to count if you need physics for your major. You just won't have the credits towards your overall count, which means that you'll have more space to take some other course that you want instead. So we're not going to make you forfeit having physics or retake physics in this example. It just, you also won't get the additional credits towards graduation. Hopefully that sort of kind of makes sense. Some of you might be coming in with dual enrollment credits. Some of you might be in courses this summer. We'll take 60 credits from a 2-year institution. Most of you are first-year students, so this probably doesn't apply to you, but just in case, we'll take up to 80 credits from a 4-year institution. And if you have transfer credit, you need to make sure that that is not test credit. You need to make sure that we have the original transcript from the source. And so what that means is, even if it's listed on your high school transcript that you took dual enrollment English, let's say, we need the transfer credit transcript from the place you took it at. So if you took it at Rutgers University, they need to give us a transcript so it goes on your record. If your courses have not been evaluated yet, you should be contacting your admissions counselor so they can help you get those courses evaluated. So we have a really good understanding of what you're starting with when you get here in the fall. Incidentally, you need a C or better in your transfer courses to get them counted at Northeastern. There is an exception of fall 20 and summer 20 when the pandemic first hit. We do allow pass-fail from those semesters because most institutions in the US instituted some kind of a pass-fail policy. So those will be totally fine to come in. But anything after that, really you need a C or better. With the other question we get is, what about pre-health? If I'm pre-health, I've heard all this stuff that they don't take AP credit, and I don't know if I should repeat chemistry and biology. I don't know what to do. We've had extensive conversations with our pre-health office, and this is what they've told us. Med schools typically do not want to see students repeating something they already have credit for. What they want is for them to, at some later date while they're in college, take an upper level course. And so if you have AP Bio, so you're coming in with credit for Bio 1 and 2, you shouldn't repeat Bio 1 and 2. What you should do is take an upper level course later on that the med schools will then use as to fill your prerequisite requirement. Same for chemistry. If you're coming in with chemistry credit, that's okay, move on. You'll take a different chemistry later on that will make up for that prereq. The other question people ask us a lot is, we don't know what we're going to get on AP or IB until sometime in mid-July. So how do we know what to schedule, or what is my advisor going to tell me when I meet with them in a couple of weeks? So typically, when you meet with your advisor, and we already asked you this on the survey too, but when you meet with your advisor, we're going to ask you how you think you did. If you feel pretty confident that you sat down and took that English AP exam and you really knocked it out of the park, then likely what's going to happen is we'll remove that from your schedule and put you in something else that makes sense. And then what we'll say to you is, okay, we are moving you forward because we think you're going to pass. If for some reason the score came back lower than you thought, just reach out to us when you get it and we'll adjust your schedule. It's not a big deal. We'll make sure you're all set before fall either way. Same thing if you're like, I don't really know. That was the hardest test I've ever taken in my life. I am not confident I knocked that out of the park. Great. We're probably going to leave you alone and say, okay, cool. Well, if you're pleasantly surprised, get back to us and we'll move you forward then. So be prepared to have those conversations with your advisors in the next couple of weeks. But this is really normal. We'll totally get you set up before the fall semester starts. So I don't want anybody stressing out that you don't have your exam scores yet. So there's a ton of stuff to navigate at Northeastern. There's potentially study abroad. There's co-op. There's, do you want to graduate in 4 versus 5 years? There's all kinds of questions that you'll need to answer at some point while you're here. And you're really supported in that process. As a Northeastern student in the College of Science, you're going to have a minimum of 3 advisors. The first advisor is going to be your academic advisor. That's my department. That's who Danielle and Eric represent. And that person is really going to help you from the fall semester all the way through graduation. They're the person that's going to help you plan out your degree. They're going to make sure you're staying on track. They also are a resource. So if you have questions or you're not sure where to go, they're going to help point you in the right direction if they're not the one that can answer the question. So that's the person you're going to develop a relationship with, and they're really helping you get from point A to point B. You'll also have a co-op advisor. We're going to talk a little bit more about the co-op process later on today. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about that other than you'll have a person who will help you navigate the co-op process and work with you before you go on co-op all the way until you're done with your very last co-op. And then finally, at Northeastern in the College of Science, we have faculty advisors. Each department that your major is housed in has one or more faculty advisors who are teaching faculty members in your department, and they're really there to help mentor you through your major. So if you have curriculum content questions, they're a great resource. If you're sort of navigating post-graduation options, they're a really great resource to help you with that. But those are not assigned to you in the same way your advisor is. They're really open to all students. And if your department has more than one, you can kind of choose which faculty advisor you might want to work with while you're here. So this next slide is really important. And we often invite families and students to watch together. So I'm not sure if there are families watching, but if they are, this slide is really relevant to both students and their family members. FERPA is a federal regulation, a federal law that protects your right to privacy in regards to your student record. What that means at Northeastern is the only thing that's public about you at Northeastern is your name, that you are enrolled, and your student email address, because all of that is what we consider directory public information. Everything else about you and your record is protected by FERPA at Northeastern. So that's things like your course schedule, your class attendance, your grades, some content of your advising appointments, right? Anything that has to do with you being a student here, other than those things I mentioned, is protected. Every single semester, starting in the fall, you will be able to choose to waive access for 2 reasons. The first reason, which is probably the most simple reason, is called third-party FERPA waiver. And what that essentially boils down to, if you check that you want to waive access, if you are nominated or win an award or recognition that's based on your academic record and you've waived FERPA, we can then announce that. The easiest example of this is our Dean's List. Every single semester, if you get a 3.5 or higher with 16 credits or more, you get awarded Dean's List. If you've waived third-party FERPA, we put your name on our website. Your parents and family members can brag about you on Facebook and link the link. That's essentially what it means. It doesn't mean that anybody from anywhere can ask about information from you. It's really pretty narrowly defined. The second way you're going to be asked to waive FERPA is parent or legal guardian FERPA waiver. This one is probably more relevant to you on a regular basis. If you choose to waive FERPA and your parent or legal guardian contacts us, then we can share your information with them. So what that means is we can talk about your class schedule, if we know your course attendance, your grades, some limited content of your advising appointments, that kind of thing. It is your choice. You get to choose whether to waive this or not every single semester. We ask that you have a conversation with whoever those relevant people would be so that you're both on the same page with whatever the decision is. The other thing is we are happy to partner with parents and legal guardians. If someone reaches out to us and we have a conversation about your record, assuming you've waived FERPA, we will always let the students know every single time. We may not give the full content of our conversation, but every time we talk to a parent or legal guardian, we will let the student know either by email, by CCing on an email, or even potentially a phone call, just so that we're all on the same page and the student is really involved in their education the whole time they're here at Northeastern. So hopefully that clarifies what you're going to be asked to waive every semester. There's a ton of ways for you to get involved at Northeastern. The one that is probably relevant to many students in the audience is our pre-health office. We have a really robust pre-health advising office. You can find them online. I believe it's northeastern.edu/prehealth, but you can also find it by Googling. They offer workshops for students at various times in the semester, and like they'll do one at the start of the semester that will be geared just towards you first-year students, and it's really all about how to be prepared if you're wanting to apply to vet school, dental school, medical school, PA school, etc. So I really encourage you to attend those workshops if you are pre-health. You also can have a one-on-one advising appointment with their advisors. And so that is often helpful, especially as you get closer to the actual applying timeline. On top of that, Northeastern, or in the College of Science, we have a club or organization with every single one of our majors. And I really encourage students to get involved for a couple of reasons. The first one is it's a great way to meet upper class students who have already done the classes you're about to take and who have already navigated some of the things you're about to navigate. If you ask it, and if you asked Eric in your advising appointment if Professor Smith was a nice teacher and whether his class was hard or easy, he probably is not giving you as robust of an answer as you maybe are looking for, right? But if you know an upper class student who's already taken his class, who's in your major, they're probably going to give you a more candid answer for a question like that. So that's a really good reason to meet people who've already done what you're about to do. The other thing is sometimes they'll bring in co-op employers or even post-grad school representatives during their club meetings, and that's a really good way to get connected to potential employers or potential graduate schools pretty early on while you're here. So there's a ton of ways to get involved. I really encourage you to get involved early and often while you're here. So here's what you can expect this summer and what you can expect this fall. So this summer, hopefully at this point, given the date that you all have looked on Canvas, you've all completed your advising survey, and you all have your advising appointment set up. I know that we've gotten a handful of emails where students say, I've done my survey, but I still don't have the link to schedule my advising appointment. More often than not, it turns out it went to the student's junk or spam folder. So if you're one of those people who haven't had the link for your appointment yet, check your junk and spam folder, because you're really probably very likely to find it. If not, you can email COS Advising and we'll send you that link. But hopefully everyone I'm talking to in this room has already done all those things, and that's, we're moving on from there. Starting next week, we're going to do our walk-in sessions, and that's when you'll meet one-on-one with an advisor, and our focus and our goal is to really get your fall semester planned. That's when we'll talk about what transfer credits you think you're going to have. That's what we'll talk about, what elective choice you might want to make, what new path choice you want to make. That's when our goal is to try and finalize your fall schedule once you have your advising appointment. After the summer, in the fall, in the week before school starts, I will send you an email that says, welcome, so excited you're here. Here's your permanent advisor. That, from that point forward, is the person you're going to work with on a regular basis, assuming you don't drastically change your major. And in the fall, we want you to make an appointment with that advisor so you can complete a long-term plan. And this is when you start. You don't have to have it all figured out. It's totally fine. But you're going to start figuring out and start answering the questions of how many co-ops can I do? When can I go on co-op? What about study abroad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that planning, that long-term planning, is going to happen in the fall semester. We'll also have, for the first week of classes, or really first week and a half, we'll have walk-ins all day for students. And so those are for, let's say you get into a class and for whatever reason, maybe it's further ahead than you thought and you want to go backwards or whatever it is, that's what walk-ins are for. You can come talk to an advisor fairly close to immediately and get your sort of immediate problems fixed. After that first week and a half, you can schedule a regular 30-minute appointment with your advisor, and you'll get instructions on how to, you don't need to figure any of that out now, but I do want to let you know that's when that will start happening. All right, let's talk about co-op. So in the College of Science, co-op is not required, but it's highly recommended. Every single student, remember when I talked about New Path earlier? There's a New Path requirement called experiential education, and every single student has to meet that requirement to graduate from Northeastern. Co-op automatically meets that requirement. So probably 97% of our students participate in at least one co-op while they're here. If you know automatically off the bat that you're not going to participate in co-op, that's something you should speak to your academic advisor about in the fall during your planning appointment, because they need to help you pick a different experience to meet this requirement. But by and large, most people choose co-op, and co-op meets that requirement automatically. You don't have to do anything extra or different. Co-ops are typically 6-month experiences. I realize that's the wrong word there. That's supposed to say experiences. Co-ops are 6-month experiences where you work full time. And these are real world experiences. So one of our previous directors used to say, these are not copy and coffee kind of jobs, right? These are true entry level positions that otherwise would have gone probably to a recent college grad, where we've sort of convinced a company to hire our students for 6 months at a time. So in a few slides, you'll see visually what this looks like when you're out of classes for 6 months, but it really is working in entry-level research, entry-level patient care, entry-level business, they're those kinds of positions. We work with over 3,100 employers and in 136 countries. The last time I checked, we had a co-op on every continent. And one of our environmental science professors takes students to Antarctica in a research base there, and they live 6 months and do research in Antarctica, which is very cool. And there are pictures of like penguins hanging outside their windows. Always makes me very jealous. So there's a huge amount of opportunities you can do for co-op. There are clinical opportunities in every Boston area hospital. There are clinical research opportunities in the Boston hospitals. We work with companies like Pfizer, Moderna. We work with Brigham and Women's. We work with Harvard Medical School. They're one of our largest employers in their research labs. We have co-ops in companies like TJ Maxx at their corporate office, like human resources and marketing related co-ops. We have co-ops in local schools for people who might want to go on and teach. So there's a huge range of co-ops for people, and you can apply to any co-op with any major. Really what employers, it's a competitive process, so you will compete for co-ops with your fellow students. They're not open outside of Northeastern, so you're not competing with like BU students or anything like that. It's just Northeastern students. And there's a wide range of co-ops. We get this question a lot. Some co-ops are designed to be entry-level co-ops. You don't need to have had a job before. You don't need to have extensive research or lab skills. They really want students who are willing to learn, and they're going to train you on the job. Some co-ops, they're looking for someone who's maybe completing a second or third co-op because they're looking for a specific skill set. So there's a huge range of co-ops, and students apply to as many as they want while through the co-op process and supported by their co-op coordinator. Here's some logistics about how co-op works. Because you're not taking classes, you're not paying tuition while you're on co-op. However, you do maintain full-time student status. So what that means is if you're doing co-op in the Boston area, you could live in Boston on campus. You could use the gym. You could, if you still want a meal plan by that point, you could have a meal plan. You know, you're a full-time student. You can keep health insurance if you're on your parents' health insurance plan, for instance. If you have student loans, it doesn't need to eat into the deferral period. So you're really, for all intents and purposes, still a student, just not in classes. We also have a lot of support if you want to do a co-op outside of Boston, whether somewhere in the US or wherever in the world. The President Ayoun, our college university president, has made it a goal that 100% of students have a global experience while they're here. And so he has created a scholarship fund that will support students who want to do an international co-op. It can help with things like living expenses or travel expenses. Sometimes international co-ops are not paid because of the visa regulations in those countries. And so the Global Presidential Scholarship offsets that fact and helps students be able to take an international co-op somewhere. We also have an office called Co-op Connections, who will help you find housing, arrange sort of like transportation to get to and from the site, that kind of thing. So you're really supported even if you're leaving the Boston area to go on co-op. One of the questions we always get is, when can you start? When can you go on co-op? Everyone wants to get here and then leave again, which is totally fine. You can start co-op. The earliest freshmen can start co-op is after 3 full academic semesters. So what that means is you'll be in classes fall and spring this year and at least fall of next year. And then half of the incoming class will go on co-op the following spring and summer 1. And the rest of the freshman class, so you all in the audience, will go on co-op in summer 2 and fall. There are no differences in jobs between the two cycles. You can graduate in 4 or 5 years on either cycle. There's really no advantage of doing one versus the other. And you'll be assigned your co-op cycle in the fall semester. So you'll know well in advance which cycle you're going to be on. I don't believe there's any transfer students in the audience, but just in case if there are, transfer students will have an individual conversation with a co-op coordinator because everybody comes in at a different place with different amount of credits. And so when you will start will really depend on what the conversation you have with your co-op coordinator. Every student before you go on co-op will take a course called EESC 2000. It's a 1-credit course. You only do it one time, and you take it the semester before you're supposed to go on co-op. So for those of you that will end up on a spring co-op cycle, you will take this 1-credit course next fall, not this coming fall, but the following one. And it is really designed to set you up to be prepared for co-op, to find co-op, and then to go on co-op. So you're going to learn, the first thing you're going to do in that class is how to put your resume together. And you're going to learn to make a resume, even if you've never worked before. You're going to learn how to apply course lab skills to your resume. You're going to create a resume, you're going to get it critiqued, and then you're going to send it to employers. After that, you're going to start practicing interviews. You're going to learn interview techniques. You're going to have mock interviews. You're going to get feedback. At that same time, you're going to be getting actual interview requests from co-op employers. After the co-op employers and after most people have interviewed and are starting to get job offers, you're going to have discussions in class about negotiating a job offer, negotiating salaries, talking about what you want to get out of co-op. And at that time, you'll start getting job offers. And then at the very end, when most people have job offers and are placed, you'll spend the last part of the semester really thinking about how to get the most experience that you want out of your co-op. So we want you to be really intentional. What do you want to learn on co-op? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to experience? And how do you ask for that? And how do you make sure that's going to happen? And so you talk a lot about that in the end of the class. And then you'll have summer session. You may or may not be in classes. And then you'll start your first co-op. You're really, really supported in the process. You don't have to worry about if you haven't had a job before, you're going to be competitive. There's a ton of entry-level co-ops, and this class is really going to set you up to get a co-op when it's your turn. So here's what 4 years no co-op looks like. This is what it looks like if you had committed to another institution. This is what it could look like if you were here at Northeastern and chose not to do a co-op. This is how I went to college. This is how lots of people go to college. This is definitely a possibility. However, most people choose to do co-op. And here's one example. We always get the question, can you hold on this screen so I can take a screenshot or so I can take a picture? You totally can take a picture, take a screenshot, but no, this is one of like 14 possibilities. It's really, truly just one example. But this is what it looks like. In this particular instance, the student would be going on what we call the fall cycle. So you see that they're in classes their whole first year, their whole second year, and then you start your first co-op going into your third year. You do your next co-op going into your senior year, and then you graduate in the spring. You'll see that there's a lot of summer classes on this plan. This is if a student comes in with no transfer credits, but still wants to graduate in 4 years with 2 co-ops, this is what that would look like. The little star is when you would take your co-op course before you go on co-op. If you have transfer credits, you might need less summer classes. If you want to do 4 years but 1 co-op, you're going to need less summer classes. If you want to do 4.5 years, you could not do 1 summer and do another summer or fall, after your 4th year. So there's a lot of ways to navigate this and a lot of ways that your path might look different than your classmates. But this is a good visual for you to kind of understand how co-op works at Northeastern. So I've done a lot of talking and I've given you a ton of information, but now we have lots of time for questions and answers. So I think Danielle is going to start firing them away at me.
Yes, we got a lot of questions coming in during the time that you were talking about the credits, specifically like the major versus new path and that kind of thing. A lot of students were interested in going over again, what's the difference between a double major and a combined major?
Yep. So a double major is you get 2 majors and you complete all their requirements. So if you wanted to study, I'm just gonna let's just go with biology and math because it's on my head. If you wanted to study biology and math, there's three ways you can do that at Northeastern. The first way is the most clear-cut way. That's you have a biology degree and a math minor. You graduate in 8 semesters. You probably have room for a few more electives. Like, you're all set. The second way you could do biology math at Northeastern is a combined major. And what that means is the math department and the biology department looked at their regular single degrees and figured out what they could take out of them, basically, to combine them. So you have one degree. So you would graduate with a Bachelor of Science in biology/mathematics. That's literally what your diploma will say. And you will have not done all of the biology and all of the math, but you will have done enough to receive a degree in a combined major. A double major would be if you want a BS in biology and mathematics. And so what that means is you do all the biology requirements from start to finish and all the math requirements from start to finish, and you graduate with 2 majors. More often than not, when students plan that out, they realize it's going to take longer than the time that they want to be here. And so they often opt for a combined major or a major and minor. Hopefully that kind of clarified the difference between those options.
Perfect. One other question in the same topic is how many minors can students complete?
Good question. You can complete as many minors as your free electives allow. It is rare for a student to complete 3 minors. It's fairly common for students to complete 2, and it's very, very common for students to complete 1. It really depends on your degree and what else you want to do while you're here. So if you want to study abroad, you may need to leave some free electives because the country where you're going may not have minor courses. So maybe you only complete 1 minor, so you have 2 leftover free electives to then do a study abroad, just as an example. You know, some majors are more flexible, so they have a little bit more room for minors than other majors. If you're a chemistry student, you might have room for 1 minor. If you're a psychology student, you might have room for 2. It really kind of depends, but typically I would say 1 to 2 is like normal.
If a student were to be thinking about changing their major, what is the deadline or process that they should be thinking about?
Good question. So this is going to be a long answer because there's a lot of like if this kind of stuff. If you're sitting here right now and you signed up to be a biology major and you know right this minute you do not want to be a biology major in whatever direction, whether that's in the College of Science or outside of the College of Science, go to your admitted student portal, change your major. It'll take about 2 weeks. You'll hear from whoever it is. If you're staying in the College of Science, you'll still hear from us. If you're moving to a new college, you'll hear from the new college, right? So if you know now, just do it now so that you can make sure your schedule is all set. You can change your major truly from now till you graduate. Obviously, the closer you get to graduation, the less of a good idea that is. If you're not positive, you could stay in this major and then explore some stuff in the fall and then switch for the spring semester. If you're switching this summer, you can do it this summer and it'll be effective this summer. Once we start school, if you change your major, it will be effective for the spring semester. That's just how the cycle works. And then from there on out, if you change your major, it's always effective the next semester. If you're sitting in the audience right now and you're like, I don't know if I want to be biology or if I want to be an architect, if I want to be an engineer, or I want to be a music major, you should probably go to the Explore program. That's really what they're set up to help you figure out, right? Like they're really designed to help you pick a little bit of this and a little bit of that and figure out which makes the most sense. If you're in the room right now and you're like, I don't know if I want to be a biology or behavioral neuroscience or biochem major, totally normal, totally fine. You can stay with us. You can pick one of those for now. Your first semester schedule is going to be almost identical for most of those majors. Like you're fine, you're in the right place. You don't need to make up your mind. But if you're sort of truly like, I don't know, I can't decide between 3 totally different things, the Explore program probably could help you best in the fall. Otherwise, stick with us, or, you know, if you already know you want to go to a new college, put your major change in and they'll process it in about 2 weeks.
We had a question come in about the +1 programs. Do students automatically just decide to be part of that, or is there an application process?
Good question. There is an application process. You do not complete the application until your junior year. You certainly can plan for it before then, but you don't complete your application until you're going into your 3rd year. There's no GRE and there's no application fee. There is a minimum GPA requirement. So when we say apply, it means if you've met the minimum GPA requirement, you're getting accepted. It's not like you have to hold your breath and hope you get accepted, but there is sort of like a declaration process, which we call an application.
We had a lot of questions also about pre-health and what does pre-health cover? So not just pre-med, but what else goes into that. And then the subpart, if a student comes in without any incoming credit, will they be at a disadvantage for going on to pre-health programs?
Excellent questions. So our pre-health covers a whole bunch of things. What our pre-health office covers is students who want to be an MD, so a doctor, a DO, which is an osteopathic doctor, a dentist, a veterinarian, a ophthalmologist, or optometrist, I always get that backwards, a physician's assistant, a podiatrist. Yeah, those are the ones that they work with currently. And so hopefully that answered that question. I lost my train of thought there for a second. To the second part of the question is absolutely not. You are not at a disadvantage if you don't have transfer credits. All they care about, med schools care about, is what you do while you're in college. That's it. They're not looking at your high school record. They don't care what your high school GPA was. They don't care what you did in high school. It does not matter. They're looking at your college GPA, your MCAT score, DAT score or GRE score, depending on what kind of program you're applying to. They're looking at your volunteer work and your shadowing and, right? So yeah, absolutely. You are not at a disadvantage if you're coming in with no credits. What you do here is what counts.
If a student has incoming credit through either dual enrollment or they took a class over at an institution over the summer and it's not in the database, what do they do?
Yep, you need to reach out to your admissions counselor and so that they can help you upload the syllabus. You need the syllabus for the class. There's a couple of ways to get that. Obviously, if you still have it, great. Send it over, you're all set. If you don't, you can contact the department who offered the class, the college who offered the class. Your high school might have a copy of it if you did it through your high school, or the professor who taught the class. But essentially, whoever offered the course somewhere in that organization should be able to give you the syllabus if you don't still have it. But you need to submit that through your admitted student portal. And if you can't figure out how to do that, your admissions counselor can help walk you through how to get it uploaded so that we can get it evaluated.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about co-op. Outside of co-op, how else can someone satisfy the experiential education requirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a couple of classes that have a service learning component to it, so a volunteer component to it. Those classes meet the EX New Path designation. There are certain study abroad opportunities that meet the EX determination, and so you could get it that way. You can do research with a faculty member. If you do it for credit, the research course meets the EX requirement in some cases. That's why I said if you know you're not doing co-op, you need to talk to your advisor in the fall. You don't need to talk to them this summer. You're all set. There's nothing for you to do yet. But in the fall, you need to let them know so that they can really make sure that you're going to get one of the experiences that meets this requirement for graduation. Perfect.
Are all co-ops 6 months or are they at different lengths?
Good question. 98% of our co-ops are 6 months. We have a handful of co-ops that are only 4-month positions. We have almost none that are just 2-month summer positions. We have had, for instance, athletes who can't go for a full 6 months. They might complete a 4-month co-op, as an example. If you're creating your own co-op, there is a potential for you to create a 4-month co-op. But by and large, the majority of our co-ops that we have available are full 6-month opportunities.
Great. There was a couple questions about the difference between a fall co-op cycle and a spring co-op cycle, specifically around financial aid, and that it appeared that some students that were on the spring co-op cycle might get financial aid for summer, while others in the fall cycle might not. So if we wanted to go back to that slide.
Yeah, so this is a fall cycle. So if you're on the fall cycle and you're doing classes in this summer one, presumably, if you have the kind of financial aid that pays out in the summer, it would pay out for summer one. The opposite would be true. If you're on the spring cycle, you'd be on co-op here and here, but you might take classes here and again, assuming your financial aid pays out in the summer, then it would pay for that summer session instead. The way it works at Northeastern typically is financial aid is divided into semesters usually. Again, your financial aid counselor will tell you individually what your financial aid is. But so this is generically, you get 8 semesters of aid typically. If you're taking summer classes, each summer term, so either this summer 1 or summer 2 term, are considered half semesters. And so if you have financial aid, like if you're doing just classes here, you'd get half a semester of aid for this summer, and then they'd hold the second half of the semester aid for this summer. Hopefully that makes sense and kind of clarifies the issue. But also, again, your actual financial aid person or the financial aid office in general can tell you specifically what kind of aid you have and whether or not it covers summers.
And just switching, if we're sticking with co-op for a little bit longer, where could you see a list of co-ops? Are students able to create their own co-ops, or just how do they find co-ops?
Yep. So generically, you can look up today on the College of Science website and you'll see a sampling of co-ops that we've worked with. That's not at all inclusive of every co-op we have for students, but you'll get an idea of the kinds of jobs that we have. Once you start the co-op course, you will be released into the co-op database. And that is literally, think of it as, well, I might be dating myself and I don't even know if this exists, but think of it as like a monster.com, but for co-ops, or indeed.com if you've looked at those. I don't know if Monster still exists. I'm maybe too old here. But anyways, it is a huge database of all the co-ops that are available, only open to Northeastern students, only open to students who are applying for the next cycle. That's when you'll see literally every job description, and you'll be able to apply to the things that you want and that you think you're qualified for. So that'll happen once you start the co-op course. After that, if you're going on another co-op, it'll open for you the semester before you're supposed to go, just automatically.
And then one more question on co-op. Do students get to choose if they go on if they're a fall cycle or they're a spring cycle?
Good question. So the short answer is no. Every student is assigned one of the 2 patterns. You'll get that pattern assignment from me in the fall semester. In probably about 3 weeks into the semester, you'll know what your fall cycle, your co-op cycle is going to be. There is a way for you to apply to switch. However, we strongly encourage you to speak to your advisor first. Often we have students who think that they want to be on one co-op cycle, and so they'll turn their paper in to switch. And then after they have a conversation with their advisor, they'll realize that possibly they were better off in the slot that they were to begin with. So there is an opportunity to switch. It's not a guarantee, but initially everyone is pre-assigned, and you'll get that assignment from me probably about the 3rd week of classes in the fall.
I'm just going to take a moment to just talk about the advising sessions and just what you should do to be prepared for those. Some students have asked, is it better to come later once I know more of my credit, or should I come as early as possible? My advice, and I think this is the advice of my department, is that you should come as soon as you can, because the earlier you can get the information from us, the better you'll know which path you should be on, what things we should be looking out for. And then if there's anything we need to do after that, we can usually finalize that over email because we've had the bulk of the conversation already in person. So it just kind of gives us more time with it, and so that you're able to prepare that. So not to say that if you've scheduled your appointment for July because that was when it was best for you, that's totally fine. But if you're able to, we always recommend sooner rather than later for that. To help you be the most prepared or help us have the best conversations possible, if you could come with knowing your the course numbers from the institutions that you have dual enrollment. So if you just want a list of those, but as long as you have that information, that's really helpful for us. So if we're looking at I took this course at Rhode Island Community College and it has this course number. We're able to look that up at the time so we can kind of get a sense of what course that might come in as, or if it's already in the database, what course it does come in as. So assuming that you got a C or better for that, we'll know that information. For any incoming exam credits, we know that the AP exams for this year are not going to be released till later in July. We're prepared for that. We do this all the time. So it's just come with the exams that you took. So if you can just have a list of the exam names that you've already taken, we can look those up just like we could a transfer credit in our database to make sure that we have that information. So as long as you come prepared with that, you can wait to send all your official scores just a little bit later.
Yep, what she said. Any other questions, Danielle, for us?
There's a bit of questions on transfer credit. So I'm going to post the mailing address for the transfer credits, right? So if you do have any transfer credit, I'm just going to post the mailing address right now. So this is where you can send your official transcript to Northeastern. It is located in New Hampshire. That's not a typo. Our clearinghouse is up there, so they do all of our processing for us. So it's our processing center. They'll scan it for us and send it over. So it is in New Hampshire. If you could have it released directly to there, that's where you could send that. There was a question on deadline to send in any transcripts. Is there a deadline?
So, sort of. Please get it in as soon as possible because it's way better for you and it's way better for us. Technically, we're not going to let you not graduate because you didn't give us your credits till your junior year or something. So the short answer is no. The long answer is please do it as soon as possible because it is way more useful for you and for us.
And second plug to that, even if you think it's not, the credit is not going to apply to your major requirements, please send it in anyway, because you never know. That could be the difference between having to take a summer course or having to take a class while on co-op that you might not have to do because we have that transfer credit. So the more information you can give us, even if it just goes to general elective credit and your overall credit, it's better to send it in now while you're still thinking about it.
Yep. I see, I was scrolling a little through chat while you were talking to them about the appointment times, and I did see a question, which I think is a pretty good one. Can we take more classes during fall or spring to avoid taking classes over the summer if we want to go on co-op? And the short answer, nothing is short at Northeastern, you will find out, is not really, especially not in your first year. In your first year, you absolutely cannot take more than 4 classes and whatever 1 credits accompany them. After that, if you have a really solid GPA and you have a conversation with your advisor, it is possible. The thing is, if you take more than 4 classes in a semester, you pay per course after that, per credit hour after that. So often, it doesn't really make sense for you to do that, but there is a possibility after your freshman year, after your first year, that you could, depending on how you've done so far, your current GPA, that kind of thing. I'll tell you, I mean, you're going to be in a lot of hard science classes. So students rarely take more than 4 because that's, you're going to be working, and that's a lot of classes and a lot of studying and that kind of thing. So ultimately, not this year, possibly next year's.
This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yes, yes. I was just trying to scroll through just to see if there was anything else that might, you know, have been a good question that maybe we hadn't got to yet. Yeah, so I'll put a quick plug. If you hopefully you all have seen this in an email already, but if you're considering participating in the Global Quest program, which means you'll go abroad in the spring to Greece, we're going to have a workshop tomorrow at 5:15, from 5:15 to 6:15, to really talk about that program specifically, who it makes sense for, how it might work academically. So we won't be able to answer questions about like housing, flights, that kind of thing. That's really, you can talk to the GEO, the Global Experience Office, but we will talk to you about whether it makes sense academically for you to participate in that program in the spring. So if you're interested, and I believe Danielle has sent the email out with the link to everybody already, but if you haven't got it, you can email
I'm going to post,
oh, just
I'm going
kidding.
to post
Perfect.
it right here. So just give me a second. I have to log back
Yep.
in.
Yep, nope, that's good. I'm trying to think what other questions came up the first time that haven't come up this time. Yes, you do have a fourth advisor if you're in the honors program. If you're an athlete and an honors student, you'll have 5 advisors. You get tons of support, but yeah, they don't replace one of your advisors that I talked about earlier. That's a really good question. You'll just get another one, essentially. If you are signed up for the Connections, the Global Connections program, which is different than the Global Quest program, you'll want to let your advisor know that when you meet with them, because that is a different set of classes, and that is a different program. So if you're signed up for that program, let your advisor know. Also, typically that program is really meant for people who might be in another country and unable to get a visa or unable to arrive in the US in time for the fall semester. If you're a domestic student, you definitely want to have a conversation with your advisor about the Connections program if you've already signed up, so that you can really determine if it makes the most sense for you when you could come to campus and take different sets of classes. So I'm not sure if anybody in the audience is under that, but hopefully that will clarify a little bit.
Un poquito, sí.
Okay, there we go. Any other, I know we're about time, but I just want to see, you'll get your honors advisor probably at the same time you get your regular advisor. I don't know when that, like start of fall, essentially. And you'll learn about all the opportunities you can do in honors once you start your honors discovery class. They'll tell you about all the things you can do as an honors student. So they'll discuss that with you in your honors discovery class. I think, did we cover everything we normally cover, Danielle?
Sounds about right. I think we got everything.
Okay. Well, look at that. We're right on time. Hopefully this was really helpful. We did record this and we will post it on our YouTube channel. If at some point you want to rewatch or just fast forward to the questions or whatever, it will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. Otherwise, we'll see you all in the next 2 months for your advising appointments. Thank you very much. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks for those of you that left the camera on. It's always really nice to look at another person instead of a bunch of black boxes. So thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Can you do the stop recording? I don't know.
Yes.